made this bag, and if you'd like to know how to make this bag, I'm going to show you how. Just follow on and you'll see how it's done. We've got the handles here, there's a zip there, and then inside there is a little pocket for the mobile phone. So if you'd like to watch on, you'll find out how to make this bag. Right, this is the material I've chosen for the main bag with the handle, and then this is going to be the lining, and then obviously the bit in between, and then this goes along the top. And this is the template you're going to need. You need to measure out, it doesn't matter what size bag you want, but if you want the same size bag as the one I've got, you need to measure out, and it's 12 inches there, and then you cut off 2 inches square into this corner here. And this is 8 inches deep. So that is your template for the bulk of the bag. Then it's 3 inches and the same width across, all the way across. So you're adding on these 2 inches, so it's 14 inches across here. And this is 3 inches down, and then the very top bit is 2.5 inches. So this will make a bit more sense in a minute when you see what I've done. So you need your material, you need a contrasting piece, or of course you can just have the bag all one colour, and I'm going to put a little pocket in on the inside of the lining. So that's my little template there for the pocket, just enough for a mobile phone. So measure out your mobile phone and then just make it a little bit bigger so that it slides in. Okay, and you are going to need some interfacing or stabiliser, whatever you want to call it, and if you're going to add a zip, then you need a zip. Alright, and I've got a zip, it's far too long actually, but it doesn't matter because it'll fold down in the bag. So we're ready to start. So we have all our pieces. Now this here is going to be the strap, and you can work out how long you want it, where you want your bag to be. I've got 38 inches here. So first thing is put your interfacing on and sew your strap. So that's all sewn, and then give it an iron. And then this is your pocket, right sides together. And then you sew that, and then you just cut the edge across there. We're going to turn this in the right way and give it an iron, and make sure you poke down into the corners. And then this one here, we're going to turn it in the right way, and you can do that by just getting a pin and closing the pin over and then pushing it back through. So depending on your design, if you have one part of the bag and then you're going to put a contrasting colour across, and then you're going to put your other part of the bag, if you've chosen to have the design like this, make sure when you sew them together that you have got this bit up the right way. And what you need to do then is sew that piece onto there, and then obviously you sew this piece onto there. So I've done the other side of the bag so you can see what I mean. So that's sewn onto there, and then that's sewn onto there. Then you get your lining and you put the right sides together. Now I've cut the lining the same size, and there's a reason for that. You can either have your zip, if you're inserting a zip, then you can have your zip at the very top. If you're not inserting a zip, then you want your lining to the top. I want to insert a zip, but I want to bring it down. So I'm actually going to fold this over, and then I'm going to put that to the edge. And then the reason I'm doing that is as I put the zip in, when the zip's finished and in, I can pull this down to this end here, and then the zip will be tucked down. It will make sense as I do it. So if you're just making a bag without a zip at this point here, you simply just sew it round. If you want a zip at the top, then you just pop your zip in and sew it there. But if you're going to have your zip so it's down inside the bag, I'm going to go through that process now. The other thing you want to decide is where you want your little pocket for your phone. So you need to work that part out first, whereabouts you're having your zip, in order to work out where your phone's going to go. Now if you're not going to have your zip inside a little bit, then you obviously don't need to cut this. If you are, cut off how much you want it to come down by. So I know that I want it to come down to there before the zip starts. So I folded that over, ironed it, and I'm now going to cut that bit off. Now the zip goes in. You need to fold back the top end of the zip like this, and then you need to lay it on the right side of the bag, and then get your lining and lay it, and you sandwich it in between the lining, zip, top of the bag. Now, to make that slightly easier, I have actually folded down and ironed that piece over so that that lays nicely. So what you're doing is you're laying your zip in, and then you're putting the lining on top, so right sides are facing, and you're sandwiching your zip in between and fold that bit down. And you can see I've already fastened it together, so you can see, so that when it's made and you get the other side on, there is your zip there. So I'm going to iron this now so that that gives it a nice stiff edge, and then I'm going to top stitch this along, and then that will keep it like that on that side of the bag. It will all make sense in a minute. This here is your inside pocket for your phone. So now you know that's the top of your bag, you can work out where you want to sew that. So I've just tucked the top down, ironed it over, and I'm going to put that little pocket just there. Right, I'm now top stitching this so it doesn't ping up when I pop it into the lining of the bag. And to do that, I'm just running it along. I've got my guide here. And that's it. Once I get back to the beginning, that'll be ready. And now we just have to top stitch this along here, and then we're ready to pop the pocket in for the mobile phone. So now this is secure now, so we've got the lining for the mobile phone, and now I'm going to pop it onto here and sew it into place. So when you do this, you want to make sure that you've got this nicely in line with the edge here, and then you're just going to come down obviously across the bottom and up the top, and then that's your pocket all done. Okay, hopefully this is a little clearer. There is your lining, and you're going to lay your zip on there, and then there is your front piece of your material. You're going to lay that on there, and basically you're going to sew that, you're going to pinch the zip inside and sew it together. But what you want to do is get rid of that top bit out of the way. So you're going to tuck it down, and then you're going to sew down there, and then that will lay over like that. So hopefully that's made a bit more sense. You'll be able to sew down there. So you're just literally pinching the zip between the lining and the top. Now if it's easier, you can just sew that little bit of zip down, get this out of the way, so that you're not trying to hold all of these pieces into place, because it can be tricky. And make sure you've got the same distance here as you've got on this side, otherwise your bag won't line up properly. So all this is pinned down here now. I mean, you can tack it if you want to, but I'm quite happy to just pin. That's down to you. Double check you've got everything right on the other side, and it's all lining up beautifully. I know this isn't hard over to the edge of this zip. I'm not overly worried, because it's a bag, it's going to be dipped down inside. If you prefer, you can go over the top again and get it even closer. But I'm quite happy with this for what I'm doing today. So I've got my needle in. I've got this amazing machine that holds the needle hold in, so that means I can show you this bit here. I've undone the zip so I don't get caught up in this width of the zip here. When you get to the other end, you want to stop short so that you can allow enough room here for your seam allowance. So don't go sewing right up to the very end. It doesn't matter that the zip's too long, so it'll tuck into the bag. That's no problem. And of course I could have done a shorter zip. That is down to you. So what you're going to do now, you're going to feel where the edge of your zip is, which is there, and then I've got my zipper foot on, and then I'm going to push against the edge of there and come down with the sewing. So you've got your zip in, and you've ironed your crease in, and now what you need to do is you need to stitch that one there and that one there. So if you're having your zip down lower, you need to catch the end right as close to the end as you can. Go over it a few times so that you know that it's secure. And now you need to do that on the other side. So you're doing both sides the same. Now if you had your lining in half and you didn't cut it, now is the time to cut it, because now we do need it separate. Alright, you may have already done that, that's fine. And then you get the right sides facing and you pin them round. Do not sew on these two pieces yet. You need to sew down here, up here, up here. So I'm going to start in this bottom corner. If you've got any contrasting colours, make sure they marry up. Okay, and then you're going to sew this up this side. I'm using quite small stitches so that it's nice and strong. And when I get to here, I'm going to stop because I need to come back this way. So when I get to there, that is when I stop. Go back over it so you get a nice edge. Now sew this back down onto here, so you've got this end and this end sewn back, being careful not to catch in any of the lining. And then you're going to lay your bag out. If you haven't cut this lining, because I had mine folded like that so I could see which way was which, then cut it along the bottom because you're going to need that to turn it in a minute. And then lay your bag out, so right sides are facing, and then take your pins and then you're just going to pin it together, but you are not going to sew these two pieces here. So you need to get all your right sides together. If you do the main bag first, leave the lining for now, and make sure that when you do it you marry up if you've got any different contrasting pieces. So we're sewing this edge, we're trying to make sure we marry up the different colours, the contrasting colours, try and keep the lining out of the way, and we're going to come all the way up the side of the bag. I've come from the bottom edge, that's better, it's just I had to stop there to make sure it married up. Coming all the way up the side. Mind your zip doesn't get in your way and mess up your needle. Go over it and make sure that you don't have it coming undone on you. And now you need to do the other side. Go along the bottom now. You've gone down the sides, going to go along the bottom but leave that piece out. This is still on the bulk of the bag. You've sewn the right sides together. The lining isn't done yet. And then when you get to this corner here, you turn this, marry the seams up, and then you sew across the bottom, corner to corner. So you've got this here, this here, this here. You need to tidy this and clip it, but just so you can see what's going to happen before we sew the lining. When you turn it, there's the bottom of your bag. So that's how it's going to look on the bottom. So we just need to tidy it up and sew the lining now. We're on the lining, so now right faces of the lining facing together, right sides facing together, come up this edge. So you've done both of these edges now. You need to leave a hole in the middle in order to pull it all through. So just come along a little way in to the bottom of that edge, and then over sew it so that you make sure it doesn't come undone. And then you're doing the same thing as you did for the main bag. So you're turning that, but you've left this gap because this is to pull the bag back through. And now you're doing exactly the same as you did for the main part of the bag. So this is the bottom of the bag, but I'm leaving this open to pull it all through. So now you do the same with the other side. And then you're going to need to do exactly the same as before. So both sides now are like that. And you come across. Okay, we're on the last leg of the journey now. So now we can turn it all in. We've got this big gap here to pull your bag all the way through. So you're turning it completely the other way. And then push the corners out. You might need a pair of scissors to push them out. So we'll get that done now. So there is our bag turned in the right way. there is our zip, and then it leaves us to attach the handle. So what you do with the handle is you fold in the ends and you top stitch it so that you haven't got your raw edges showing, and then you're ready to go. Now, as I say, you've got this raw edge here by the nature of the way we've sewn it together. Now you can either pull that down and then just stitch it across, and you can put your handle on the outside, or you can fold your handle like this and then you can tuck it in. That will cover that raw edge, and pull it over so when you pull your bag up it's looking like this. Or you can just lay it flat along there and sew it so the handle is on the inside, or alternatively you can pop it on the outside. So that's up to you, that's your choice. I'm going to go ahead now and pop mine on the inside. So that's ready to go on. So that's how the handle will go on. Okay, and the last thing you need to do, of course, is you need to get your lining here, and then I'm going to iron it together and then just stitch it across the top there. So there we have our bag. Got our hedgehogs on, we've got our zip, and there it is finished. However, I've decided I'm going to add some handles, and to do this I'm going to need to undo the zip here at this point here. You need to cut 2 lengths of material, whatever you want your handles. I've cut them 22 inches, allowing for the seam. If you can imagine, oh, it's 2.5 inches wide, sorry, and if you imagine that's all sewn, that will go on there, and then you can sew it on the inside here, and it will work. So first of all, as I say, I've cut them. I've put the stabiliser on, or interfacing, whatever you call it, on there. Well, people call it different things, and I've been asked the same question and it's the same thing. Okay, so that's ironed on there. You can get sewing, as I've said before, and then I'm going to turn that, sew up each side and turn it round the other way. So that's what I'm about to do now. So I've cut 2 handles ready to go on the bag. So I've got 2 little handles. You don't have to do that, looks good as it is, but now I've finished it, I thought I'll put 2 handles on, see how it looks. Fold it right sides together, and then you're going to sew down this edge here. Then you need to turn it the other way. Ideally, I'd have liked this to have been wider, or 2 pieces sewn together. However, that's all I had left, so this is what I'm going to go with. I think if you're doing, I would suggest you have it a little bit wider to make the turning easier. I know I've put the interfacing on both sides, but I want it to be really stiff because it's the handle that you hold as opposed to a strap. So I'm now just going to run the sewing machine down this edge here, and I'm going to turn it. So that's sewn down there. Now you pop your pin on the end of there, and you need to turn it, and this is the fiddliest, the most awkward bit that you need to do to get it started. That's why if it's wider it's much easier. So you're just going to coax it through. Alright, so you're going to do that all the way to the other end. Now what I've done, I've turned it over so that the seam is underneath. It will be underneath the handle. Then you iron it out so that you get a nice crease down there, and then you fold the end in, and then we're going to need to top stitch that. Right, get your handle and decide how long you want it. I actually only want my handle 20 because I've worked it out that that's what I'd like. So I'm actually going to cut this end piece off. So you find your centre, then measure out where you want your handle. Play around with it, put it where you feel happy, but it's usually around about that 3rd section there. So you're almost cutting it into thirds. Alright, and then you can pin that on, and then you can sew it on. So this will be cut off in a minute. And then the next thing you're going to do when you've done that, you don't have to, you can leave it like that, or you can fold it over and then top stitch it from about there so that you've got something better to grip hold of. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute, and it'll make a bit more sense. So if you look at this handle here, I've measured up 4 inches and put a marker, and I've measured up 4 inches and put a marker. I'm going to fold this across here now, and I'm going to iron it from the marker. So being careful with your fingers, you need to iron that crease in. It makes it easier then when you sew. So sew your ends there so that you've caught them down, tuck them up, sewn them across. There's my 4-inch marker there. So I know it's by that little fox's head. And now what you've got to do is fiddly. If you've ironed it over, it will really help because it will hold it in place. And then you're sewing that down to the next 4-inch marker. So that's what we've got to do now. And measure the width of your bag and mark the centre line, because you don't want this going off or skew it. I know a lot of it is by eye, but mark your centre line, just your centre of your bag. And then I'm going to come out 3 inches from that point, and then we'll make that as our starting point as to whether we want the handle there. And that, by my eye, looks about right. So I'm actually going to pin that on there now, ready. And then I shall pin the other side. So again, mark out from the centre 3 inches. That's if your bag is this size, of course. Careful you haven't twisted it as you've laid it down. And put your pin in. You can tuck it into place if you want to. Some people actually put their handle on as they sew here and sew it in the bag, but I think it looks rather nice laying on top. Now when I come to sew that in a minute, I'm going to have to be careful. I'm going to have to pull the zip part down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over, because I can show you I've already done this side. And what I've done, I've top stitched this piece first, then I've done this bottom piece, pulling the zip out of the way as I've done it. And I used the zipper foot against that edge, because then it could go right up to the edge as far as I could. So I used the zipper foot here. I did the same this side, top and bottom, and then I top stitched that into place. So when you do come to do your second one, make sure obviously your handles line up and they're the same length. And I'm ready now to sew the other side on, but I wanted you to see it the way I did it. And as I say, you're going to have to pull that down if you have a zip there. Of course, if you've not put a zip in, it's going to be very, very easy for you to do. If you've got your zip at the top, then you're going to have to come down with the handles and catch it under the zip here. So here you are, just to show you what I mean. There's the handle there with the pin. There it is in place. Remove your pin, sew along the top. So we're going to sew along the top first of all. Make sure it's very secure, your ends, however it is that your machine does that. Pull this out, get rid of all your bits of thread, and then you're going to need to remove your foot, possibly, it depends on how much room you've got there. Put your zipper foot on, and then this is where you're going to come in on from this side, noting where the edge of the strap is, and then you can go right against your zipper foot and get it right over as close as you can. So there you have it, and then you can just top stitch the outside down the edges here and here. So when you turn it over, you need to top stitch this edge and this edge. Just now we just had the bag with the shoulder strap. Now we have the handles. I'm really rather pleased with that. So either way, I can either go along the road like this, or I can pop it on my shoulder. And it opens up beautifully to show inside all of our work for our mobile phone and our lining. And you can just hold it like that if you want to. You don't have to zip it up, because the nature of the way that the handles go across is actually almost clamped it together. So I hope you like this little bag we've made here today. You don't have to put handles on, you don't have to put a zip in, you don't have to make it with extra layers. You can just make it with the basic pattern. That is just taking it one step further each time to show you what you can do. So thank you for watching. For our home help video website, visit www.deriton33.co.uk. Thank you.